Hello, how are all of you? I have tried to shoot this video about 30 times and I've either been interrupted or something's happened or my phone rang. Let's look at the books I've been reading. There's a mix of genres here, but definitely a high dose of fantasy, and a couple of these are rereads, so that's where we're going to start, I suppose. I'm on the reread of The Seventh Cadence. This is a phenomenal fantasy book. I've talked about this on my channel before. Absolutely brilliant, strong, world-driven epic fantasy with a bit of grit to it. And by the way, I do love maps in books. That is a thing for me. Like, I love a map in a book, and most people don't understand that. And here, so these I picked up ages ago in Charity Shop. I love this guy's work. I really do. And I do end up going back. I always buy his books whenever I see them. And I have a thing about hardbacks, so that's always a bonus because... And they're proper hardbacks too. If you like historical fiction, I highly recommend this guy. Just a great writer that packs a punch, that gives really intelligent storytelling. And The War of the Wolf and The Lords of the North, a prime example of that. Just really well done. And I need to get these price tag stickers off because they're annoying me. This was an interesting read. I got this in a library sale. And I do appreciate large print. Because my eyesight's appalling. I have contact lenses in. Honestly, mixed bag. Enjoyable for what it was, but definitely not one I'm going to revisit. It's kind of historical fiction. But this is not one I'm going to revisit, and will probably donate at some point in the future, because it just didn't tick certain boxes for me. It wasn't a bad book, but it wasn't one that left a huge impression. So that's The Fortress Elzeb. I couldn't resist this. This was in one of my local charity shops in their sales bucket, and I love fantasy. I read the first book a long time ago. They're not that dense. So this is 4 books in one, and just genuinely good fantasy. Again, maybe not the best on the planet, but nice fast action, great characters, and memorable. So this will be going on my fantasy shelf. It was actually surprisingly good, and it was nice to get this for so cheap. Because I had this had been kind of on my wish list for a long time, and there it was. So I was like, you know what, I'm buying you soon. Now this is a fantastic little book. This is a reread. It's short stories by many different writers, each one about the mythos of Excalibur and King Arthur and Merlin. If you know me well enough, you know I'm an Arthurian legend nerd. So there we go. Actually really enjoyable. And I like short story compilations because I found some great writers that way. There's definitely something in here you'll love, and there's stuff that you won't love. And that's the nature of short story collections, I suppose. The Arrow of Sherwood. I picked this one up a long time ago and I hadn't read it. It's a historical retell of the Robin Hood myth, and I love those stories. I love English folklore and English histories and stuff like that, so getting this was a really nice buy. Definitely not the strongest version I've ever read of the story, but definitely not a bad version either. Definitely one I want to revisit. Maybe I just wasn't in the right mood for this yet. This was sent to me by the writer. This is a phenomenal Western novella. And if you know me and you know my channel, Westerns are some of my favourite books. And this is really good. It's an adventure. It's a journey. It's a travel. And with great written, strong female characters, and really strong female characters, actually. People should learn from this. Paints a beautiful scene that it's really descriptive, and I was actually really surprised how much I love this. And I read this quite quickly. It's only 200 and something pages, so it's not a dense book, but it packs a lot in, which surprised me. Definitely worth checking out. So if you want a good Western, this will be on the list. This was sent to me by Titan, Bound Proof. I have mixed feelings. I don't think I was in the right mood for it. It's a really strong environmental sci-fi, the surviving sky, and it didn't gel with me. Maybe I just wasn't in the right mood, and I did enjoy it, but I did find it was a book that I won't revisit. And sometimes, especially in the middle of the book, the pacing was a bit strange. like it slowed down to a crawl at some points, but it did pick up again, so that's always a good thing. Just a good book, but definitely one I'm going to revisit before doing my final review. I don't think I was in the right mood. Another one. Now this is a surprisingly good fantasy. I wasn't expecting this, to be honest with you. Um, Again, pacing is an issue for me, but I do like quite world-building storytelling, and sometimes the world building felt a little bit like a last-minute addition, but still a good, strong book. I'm giving it like a good star rating. In general, a good story, great characters, nice to read a book based on some myths and legends as well. Great fantasy storytelling, and the world building is actually very good. So just a little info dumpy and a bit slow in places, but overall good. We are coming into winter, and you know what that means? My yearly reread of the His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman. I have talked so much about this series that I've been shocked by it, to be honest. As a kid I loved it because of the adventure and the mystery and the armored bears and witches. And then as an adult, it's like, oh, theology, metaphysics, the nature of the universe and existence. It really does pack a very strong punch. And it's like, as an adult reading this, it's a very different experience as a child. And one I will definitely keep revisiting. I adore this. It's one of my favourite series ever created. It's in like my top 10. So always good. And on that note, I picked up something. Now, I own this in paperback, and my paperback is in appalling condition. And I mean that. It's in appalling condition because it's a cheap paperback, and it's got post-it notes and things dotted through it where I've done notes for work and stuff. And I saw this. It's not immaculate, but it was in a charity shop for a few pounds, and I couldn't resist it. This is a great reference book for the His Dark Materials trilogy, and it features characters, locations, info. It's just a good reference material. So if you are interested in this, I would wholeheartedly recommend proper hardback again, which is always appreciated. If you are interested, I recommend this. It gives you a really good insight, and it was approved by Philip Pullman. So it does give you a brilliant insight into the worlds of the His Dark Materials, the characters, history, you name it, it's there. And it's a nice reference material book. It looks quite chunky, but it's actually very easy reading. And just phenomenal, to be honest with you. And one thing I will say, I appreciate the alethiometer on the hardback, but my original version is disintegrating at the seams, which is unfortunate. But you know what? This is why I like hardbacks, proper hardbacks, because they last. Where paperbacks, especially books like this, because in paperback form, this is like double the thickness and a little bit smaller. So it's a bit more condensed and text is a bit smaller. So this has much bigger text, which is also appreciated. So yeah, that's been my reading and the books that I've gone through. I don't make a huge amount of book content on here, but I thought you guys would be interested. And if there's anything you like, please tell me and leave comments. I want to know what you guys have been reading.